Hello and welcome back to another Walking Dead video. Today I'll be talking about the day The Walking Dead died. For a lot of people, The Walking Dead died on October the 23rd, 2016 with Season 7, Episode 1. The day will come when you won't be. With the big reveal deaths of both Abraham and Glen. Glen was a fan favourite character and his gory and over-the-top final moments was too much for some fans, and this caused a sharp decline in viewership shortly after this episode aired as fans left. However, I was not one of those fans, and I believe The Walking Dead could have recovered from this blow in viewership. Glen might have been a fan favourite character, but this is The Walking Dead. No character is safe. I would even go too far as argue that Glen's death was necessary, as without his death, characters like Maggie would never get their chance to shine and would always be in Glen's shadow. For me, the day The Walking Dead died was on February the 28th, 2018, with Season 8, Episode 9, Honor. This is the episode when they killed off Carl Grimes, the character that I would argue is the most important character in the show, even more important than the protagonist Rick Grimes. This episode changed the future of The Walking Dead forever, to the point we are still feeling the effects and ripples of his death up until the final episode of The Walking Dead. This death was the biggest mistake AMC and Scott Gimple ever made. At the time, it was so hated that Scott Gimple was removed as showrunner after the airing of this episode. Scott at the time said it was necessary for Carl's death, because without his death, Rick wouldn't end the war and Negan would die. But in the comics, Carl doesn't die, the war still ends, and Negan lives. This is just one of the many lies that Gimple says to try and cover the fact that he does not respect the source material and thinks he's better than the creator of The Walking Dead. The death of Carl also inadvertently led to the departure of Andrew Lincoln and the loss of Rick Grimes, the protagonist of The Walking Dead, less than one season later, as the death of Carl takes away Rick's whole reason to keep on fighting, as Carl was his core motivation in the show. Without Carl, what's left for Rick to do, as he no longer has his family, which has been his whole thing since Season 1, Episode 1. It has been known that Andrew Lincoln did want to leave The Walking Dead since Season 4. However, Channel Riggs did share online that after they read the fact that Carl's going to die in Episode 8, Rick/Andrew Lincoln came to his trailer and said sorry and talked about maybe it's his time to go. The death of Carl opened the actor's eyes to maybe he should leave too. Maybe if Carl didn't die, Andrew Lincoln would have carried on doing what he was doing since Season 4 and being like, I'll do maybe one more season, and we probably would have had Rick Grimes for a bit longer. The loss of the protagonist Rick Grimes in Season 9 of the show really changed everything. The Walking Dead had to reboot with new characters, but never really found a new main character, and the show is left in protagonist limbo for the last 3 seasons of its run, with characters all over the place. Carl was the future of The Walking Dead, and even Scott Gimple knew that and told Channel Riggs months before changing his mind and killing him off. This is the sole reason why Channel Riggs and his family moved to Georgia, as they believed Carl would be on the show for a really long time. In the comics, Carl is one of the only characters that make it through the entire thing, and even outlives Rick Grimes. The comics even end with Carl having a family, and the entire story of The Walking Dead that we've been reading up to that point has just been a book that he's reading to his daughter. Because of Carl's death and Rick leaving, we could never have the ending of the comics. The death of Carl Grimes was the moment I realised that The Walking Dead is not what it used to be. And with his death, I saw the show for what it was now. It was a show devoid of talent, and it was just a show about shock deaths after shock deaths and cliffhangers. It was all about trying to keep the viewers for as long as possible, and not about trying to tell a story. Gimple was no longer writing for us, he was now writing for himself, trying to make The Walking Dead like Game of Thrones. After Carl's death, The Walking Dead was at an all-time low, with no showrunner and with lots of angry fans. But then Angela Kang stepped in, and she got The Walking Dead back on its feet with its best season yet, Season 9. However, this was not the same Walking Dead. Under Kang, The Walking Dead we all watched and loved was over. What we got was completely different. Gone was the story of Rick Grimes. Gone was the danger that at any point, at any time, a character can die. Kang's Walking Dead was very different. It was way too safe. Her Walking Dead had everyone with massive plot armor, and she was completely reactionary to Gimple's seasons. She was the complete opposite to Gimple. Gimple wanted shock value and cliffhangers, where Kang wanted a simple story with no deaths, and she just wanted a safe show. The Walking Dead is a show about risks and she provided none. She just completely rebooted the show and tried to start all over again, trying to fill in Carl and Rick's roles with characters like Henry, Judith and Daryl. Her seasons are borderline a completely different show that just carry over the brand name and maybe a handful of side characters. All of this would not happen if Gimple did not kill off Carl in Season 8, Episode 9. That is why I believe the death of Carl is the day The Walking Dead died, as it leads to the loss of protagonist Rick Grimes and a complete reboot of the show in Season 9. Without the death of Carl, we probably would have had Rick stay on for all of Season 9 and maybe bow out in Season 10, and Carl would have been the rightful next protagonist instead of a protagonist limbo with not really anyone to take up the role. We also wouldn't have probably got a massive reboot of the show and to have a massive time jump to age up many characters. Because of Carl's death, the show just really lost its way, and it spent its last few seasons really wandering around trying to replace what they lost with random characters, and it didn't really work. The Walking Dead had to become a completely new thing after the death of Carl, and that is why I believe Carl's death is the day The Walking Dead died, and not what a lot of people say, which is Glen's death, because I personally believe the show could have eventually survived Glen's death. It is just the 1-2 bang of Glen Season 7, Carl Season 8, which killed the show together. Without Carl's death, we would have recovered. Probably without Glen's death, we would have recovered, but just both of them killed the show. But because Carl was last, that's the day that killed the show for me. Carl's death definitely had a massive snowball effect with, because Carl died, Andrew Lincoln thought about leaving, and because Andrew Lincoln left, the show had to be rebooted after he left. But don't get me wrong, Season 9, 10 and 11 are fantastic seasons. It's just they do feel very different to the previous 8 seasons. But please tell me down below, when do you think The Walking Dead died? Do you agree with me it was Carl's death, or do you think it's a completely different thing, or Glen's death? I'd like to know all your thoughts and opinions down below, but if you want more Walking Dead content, please look on the screen, click on something else, you'll find something else you like, guaranteed. But this is it for me today, so make sure to like and subscribe to help out the channel and to get up to date with all things Walking Dead. So, goodbye, peace out, and I'll see you later.